What's the craziest reason you had to fire someone? I'm a chef at an upscale restaurant. The sauté cook has a lobster dish on his station that involves a technique called deglazing. That involves alcohol, so in turn the pan catches on fire briefly and flames up. When you do it correctly, hard to do it incorrect, the alcohol is cooked off and the flame goes out. Every time he made this dish he would deglaze the pan, catch it on fire, and then blow it out, blowing his own germs and nastiness all over someone's food and everything in the blast radius. That was a week ago. Fired him after he did it multiple times, after being asked not to. Maybe it's because of the current state of affairs, but I couldn't believe a trained cook would do that. I'm a mere prep cook /decent line experience, and I can't believe someone would do that. Pandemic or not, it's just not what you do. It's like cutting cheese into tiny pieces instead of using a grater. The guy had somehow hung on by the skin of his teeth when caught making plastic model funny cars at his desk. Pro tip: throwing a newspaper over the model doesn't hide the smell of the glue, but when a client called complaining about our hero trying to sell him golf clubs out of the trunk of his car, he was gone. Like black market golf clubs. At a retail job, we had a kid come in and punch in for the day then go home. Would come back at quitting time and punch out. We use separate attendance and pay software. We had someone punch into the pay software at 5 AM, go home, come back and work his scheduled 5 PM to 10 PM, and clock out at 10 PM. Opening and closing crew aren't too familiar with each other, so he wasn't caught until Big Boss, who is normally a mid, came in early one day and saw him doing it. One thing I loved about working in a restaurant was getting stuff in bulk. We could always ask my boss for 25 pounds of onions and he'd buy them at the restaurant supply depot and sell them to us at cost. Same for kegs, meat, base ingredients, whatever. It was dope. One of our cooks was also a sushi chef. One time we had the boss pick up just a fuck ton of sushi stuff and sashimi grade fish. The sushi dude then taught us how to make sushi, and we ate like kings for a couple days. The difference was, we always paid for it. And if the boss needed us to work an extra shift, cover someone who no called / no showed, or even help him clean his pool, then we always said yes. Plus he's hook us up with free beer constantly. Lol, this is a good example of symbiosis in humans. I use you, you use me, neither is harmed. Fired a guy for looking to pay someone to cast black magic on the owner and the owner's family to bewitch them into giving him a raise, and, ironically, never firing him. Only reason I found out was because he asked someone else in the office for help in finding a witch doctor to cast the spells and word got round. No one wanted to be in the same room as him after that. When I confronted him, he said the devil made him do it, so it wasn't his fault. I live in the Middle East. I definitely did not wake up expecting to fire someone for black magic that day. Side note, practicing black magic is literally a death sentence here. He's gonna post about firing his witch doctor. I work at an art studio where we teach classes and sell pottery that our artists make for others to paint. I'm one of the artists and the manager. I started getting a funny feeling about one of my employees. She wasn't doing anything blatantly wrong, just seemed to work really slowly sometimes, request insignificant but kinda odd schedule changes, and have different break habits from the other staff. I started feeling like she was stealing, but this is a really small business, so I didn't have her on camera or any way to really prove it, until she accidentally sent me a video of herself painting pieces that I made from her home. Not too crazy, more stupid than crazy. One of the programmers on my team was sitting at his desk looking at porn. And this is cubicle land, no offices. My director walked into the area to talk to me and saw it. Then it was the first thing he told me about, so I got up and walked over for a look myself, and there it was. Me and the director looked at each, and I said, I gotta take care of this. So we walked back 2 hours. I told them what was going on and what we saw, and they told me to fire him. So I did. He lost a $110,000 job for looking at porn on his computer at work. If I look at PRN, I want to whack one off. Work really isn't the place for it. had an employee that was going to get fired for simply showing up late constantly with no legit reason. During the term meeting she tells me another employee cut the brake lines in her car. It's obvious this was to save her from being fired. She didn't realize that something like that gets cops involved. She was termed, and then detectives showed up to her house to get statements. Of course, no evidence of lines being cut, and now she's dealing with police for making false statements. I was a bartender/bar manager. This guy came in one night and said he was an aspiring DJ and asked if we would consider hiring him to come in just on Sunday nights to DJ for us. He said we wouldn't have to pay him at first, he would just take tips and we could renegotiate after he helped to build up our Sunday night crowd. He lasted less than 3 months. He drove away so much business, and I got so many complaints. He played the same songs every week, and when people made requests for commonly known songs, he had no idea who the musicians, were. I had to fire someone who was working for free. He was a nice guy, which is the only reason he lasted as long as he did. In the early 2000s I managed a coffee shop that required the customers' names to be put on the cup. One guy looked like he was doing it, but upon closer inspection on some cups he was writing an IP address. Turns out he was running an illegal sports book out of the shop. He did quit before I had to technically fire him because he found out I knew. He worked at the company for 2 weeks, came to the Christmas party on Friday, got shit-faced, told the hour manager that she was a slut and would die alone. They had some previous vaguely romantic history, went on a couple of dates or something, tried to fight 2 of the customer service managers who asked him to calm down, and while being escorted out he turned to the CEO and COO and told them to go fuck themselves. He showed up to work on the Monday talking about how fun the party was and how he had seen some people who would probably be called into hours that morning. He was the first and only employee to be called and was sacked on the spot. Some Todd Packer energy there. Once I had a guy call in sick to his restaurant/bar shift right before his shift and then proceeded to show up shit-faced drunk for happy hour during the time he was supposed to be working. He was not a bright man. Edit. Dear Lord, I posted this before bed thinking nothing of it and woke up to like 15k upvotes. Here we are at nearly 21k. Restaurant life, man. So many can relate. To clarify, with this guy it was not an isolated incident. Mental health days are totally legit. Just don't come to work for happy hour shit-faced. Restaurant life be wild on so many levels. I didn't do the firing, but a company I worked for was growing rapidly and needed people quickly. So, they weren't too picky in who they hired. They hired this one guy, Rick, who was kind of strange. Seemed harmless enough, but he was just kind of weird and socially awkward. He started off okay, but after a couple of months, his work started trailing off. His supervisor spoke to him to find out why, thinking maybe something at home was going on or there was some other issue. Rick said all was okay and left it at that. However, there was no change in his work. Long story short, the line guys started looking into his computer usage and found that he was trying to log into porn sites at work all day long and being repeatedly thwarted by the firewall. Then he started doing searches on how to get around the firewall, then tried getting around the firewall, and then tried logging into the porn sites again. He did all of this on his work-issued computer on the company's network on company time. Yes, after that all came to light, he was quickly shown the door for misuse of company property. Looking back, I kind of feel sorry for him. I'm guessing he was either just that stupid or battling some kind of porn addiction if he couldn't abstain for 40 hours per week. I work construction, and one of the subs gave me an invoice with no receipts. Turns out he wanted 30k for 4 weeks of work without paying the companies he rented equipment/dumpsters from. I paid off the companies he owed money to and told him to fuck off. Sad part is he's probably out there still doing the same thing. My dad does the same thing, writes in huge capital Sharpie letters in his awful contractor handwriting on all of his tools as soon as he gets them. Also doesn't like to get new looking tools, so he dirties them up before they come to the job site, if he has to leave them in a job site box instead of his truck. My new drill has Bluetooth in the drill, and in each battery. You can set it so none of them will work if they are not within Bluetooth range of your phone. Kinda nice when those batteries cost $90 each. When I was a bank teller, a fellow teller got fired for stuffing her purse with a strap of $100s every day, $10,000. Here's the interesting part. She always put the strap back into her teller drawer at the end of the day. She did this for months and months apparently without anyone noticing. But when the camera auditors finally did catch it, she was confronted and fired. When they asked her why she put a strap of money in her purse each day but always put it back, she said that if the bank were ever robbed then she could just take the money home because everybody would assumed it was taken by the robber. The saddest was a lady that smelled like alcohol pretty frequently. I don't think she was drunk on the job, maybe some shots done at lunch combined with sweating out the prior night. But the other members of the team started to complain about it, and it was becoming disruptive. Interestingly enough, there was someone I worked with that always smelt of pickle juice. Turns out he was drunk at work the whole time, and masking the smell with pickles, which works to a certain extent, but not perfect apparently. One guy regularly called in saying that he was hungover due to company drinks. However, I was the one paying for those drinks and he had, at most, 2 pints of beer prior to leaving any of these events. Another person called our CISO Kim Jong-un when said CISO was asking about scans and patching, and this was after multiple formal warnings of similar shit. Yet another person decided they were going to repatch everything in the comms room without notice, not test their work, and not be in the office the following morning. My favorite was the genius who decided that we are taking that server out of production in 6 weeks, translated to them being allowed to turn the box in question off, remove it from the data center, put it in the back of their car, sell it to their friend, and then hand over copies of software we'd written so said friend could run a horoscope and sex phone service. As a wonderful colleague of mine has said, where the fuck do we find these people? Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed the video, hit like. If you would like to see more, feel free to subscribe.